Have you ever had your students present their research from an assessment and you ask them kind of what their research approach was? And it basically consists of Google search, right? Now, we all know the research practice goes beyond Google, and I think our students know this. And there's like really extensive, especially I've learned this last year, extensive resources from the university, like incredible databases, expertise, skills. So why don't our students use it often? And I'm not saying it's always because of something. Well, if we expect our students to go beyond Google in their research practice, we've got to provide the support and the opportunities for them to build that practice themselves. So, sorry, swap over. Hello. There we go. So today we're going to present a short case study of a library resource that we designed together to support our first year innovation students to conduct engaged research in the city of Bristol. So it was a collaboration between me, I'm Keir, Senior Lecturer at the Centre for Innovation, and researcher in participatory design, the use of digital media for engaged research.
Hi, and I'm Marika Zeimbekis, Subject Librarian for Innovation, Philosophy, Anthropology, Archaeology, and I'm also a researcher in archaeology and material culture studies.
So we're going to just start by actually showing what you made, because I think that's useful. So we'll give you an overview of the resources we developed. It was a course of recorded presentations and a matching online resource that we sort of produced together between the two of us. The stream channel that you can see here, and this is one of the university stream channels, is 16 videos to support our students to progressively develop their library practice for the engaged research that we asked them to do, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and in those videos, we iterate how students can use the library website as a portal to all its rich resources. And here, the base camp for our students in innovation is the subject guide for innovation and entrepreneurship, which has handy links to the key databases and resources, as well as tips on how to use them. And it's important to mention the principle that the library's guides meet student needs to have the right information in the right place at the right time.
So I'll just briefly talk about the context that we were kind of working in. So I teach in the Centre for Innovation. We have 13 different disciplines and around 120 students in our first year. In the first unit they teach, I direct, we work with them in teams to learn, apply, document and reflect on participatory design and research methods for innovation. So working with people to produce designs. Now, this year we set a live brief, which is what we often do for our sort of student teams. And it was by a group called Design by Nature, the Student Awards. And the brief that we used was that our students had to create an affordable, practical and evidence-based prototype that brings the multiple benefits of nature into the homes of low-income inner-city communities. Now, this was difficult this year because it was online and it's about nature and doing stuff. But we'll talk about that. So we have 13 different disciplines, as I said, on the course. So what we say is inclusion is not just a moral imperative, it's a strength, right? So transdisciplinary means we produce more than the sort of sum of its parts, right? The innovation program's cohort offers really unique opportunities. It's brilliant, but it's also quite a nightmare for teaching, right? So when we work together, me and Marika, we sort of thought we need to support our students using the library service to do this work. We often ask our students, we always ask students, to frame their research and their design problems around how might we think. So we thought we should do this, right? So we came up with these three, and we're going to kind of go through them and give you some examples briefly.
Great. Okay. So the first question, how might we support our students to build an engaged research practice through agile use of the library content? So from day one of the units, as Keir said, students are expected to conduct research in the city and to work with ideas in an ethical way. Now, to do this, they do need to pick up really quickly a set of basic as well as more advanced information skills. And this is quite a high bar for year one students. Now, what I would say is that working with innovation, I have been really impressed by the way students have run with this challenge. And my understanding and my insights from the working with innovation is that these competencies are really meaningful to them because they are incorporated in their research practice. So as an example, students practice research strategies to access information on Web of Science, which, as you know, is a powerful database which covers arts, humanities, and all the sciences. So students experience the intellectual stimulus of conducting group research beyond the boundaries of their discipline. which is an opportunity that the Centre for Innovation really offers them. But they actually also learn more about their own traditions and disciplines through comparison with other disciplines. And here we have just a small snippet of one of those videos to give you a little flavour of what
So I've decided I want to increase my searches, so I will add participatory science.
One of the things we always ask you to do is you have to show evidence of your research, right? And that's just key in research generally. One of the things that we want to build on, I think, in innovation is that you go beyond this idea of just, we did some searches, right? And I think part of this is starting to build up a database of this kind of work, right? So your kind of research accounts that we ask you to do, you being able to say, well, okay, we start with citizen science, but actually what we then started to broaden our search terms was to more like nature reserve, green spaces. We looked at specifically anthropology here. That tells a much more convincing story about the depth and the kind of the range of research.
Okay, so if we move on to our second question, which is how might we develop an information literacy programme which is integrated into the students' 4-year progression? So this is very much thinking in terms of unit level, but progressing it onto the scale of the programme. So what's really useful is that we have JISC guidance about information literacy and proficiency. So what the library has done, it's divided its own information literacy framework for Bristol to help us to do just that. So its objective is to develop students' research skills by building their competency in 3 key areas: discovering, evaluating, and referencing information in a digital world. And the framework sets out these areas of competence in terms of 3 levels of capability, so novice, intermediate, and expert. So the framework for Bristol maps out how students are expected to progress through the levels of ability during their academic programme. And the objective is very much to empower students with information skills and attributes that are transferable in their education, in their employment, their place of work, and in their citizenship. And this approach, which has been devised by the library, is very much aligned with the Bristol Futures curriculum framework, which it has also informed.
Apologies, got a bit overexcited there. So, just turning to the third question, how might we? So equip students with information literacy skills for engaged design-led research. Now, I think one of the things we're really keen on here is that we do. So we call it kind of a bit of a suck it and see approach. We did this between us because we decided it was important. The centre that we work in physically, hopefully, is designed for sort of serendipity and collaboration, right? Physically bumping into people doing things. Now, in terms of that, and in terms of the way our students work, what we do, this is a sort of an overview on a mural of everything we do. Each of these is a resource you can click on. We have 2-week sections in the unit, right? For those 2 weeks, our students go doing a engaged task, might be interviews, for example, or here, going collecting stuff in nature. We have a guest talk from an expert, which was a filmmaker making films about nature. And then, importantly, we have a resource, because we're talking about practice in our main lecture and kind of methodology, epistemology. We then link to the SAGE research methods, which directly not only introduces the fact that it exists and how to use it physically, but also how to use it in terms of innovation and the specific work that we're doing. So they'll be set a task alongside their kind of engaged task and synthesis task, that is do this library thing. Because they can't then turn around and say, I Googled it. They can turn around and say, well, what did you show specifically in Web of Science and where are your search terms? Because otherwise, it's not fair. So just really briefly, I've directed this unit for 4 years. We've worked for 2 or 3, I can't remember, the last year's maybe a bit busy. We first just had one session. We'd have a workshop together, which I think really worked for us for that one session. But the problem was it wasn't a continual learning thing for our students. Now, what we decided was to kind of bring our practices together and to develop a kind of a pilot project that would be continuous. And as you saw from that last slide, there's this kind of 12-week thing. We thought, how do we produce something for this? So I just wanted to point out as well, we work with Sarah Brain, who's our library management specialist. She's incredible. She produced some of these resources and she also works on the single ones. We've asked her to come in because A, she's brilliant, but B, because management is really quite a big focus for our entrepreneurial students as well. And we're really hoping to work more with next year, but I really want to highlight her support in this. So in terms of what we actually did, right, very simply, we kind of met a couple of times, and this was all on Zoom because of COVID. We decided that actually the best way to record this is we did it on Zoom. Marika prepared 12 sets of slides, and we decided that's what we needed. And then for each of those sort of presentations, we met on Zoom, and we do maybe 3 or 4 in each session. We did it in one take. That was a really key thing, because I am terrible as a TV presenter. I am a good lecturer. It's a different thing. You also worry too much. There's a top tip. I ended up doing some fancy stuff with slides. I found Zoom was better, much better quality than Teams, but you can just put a title in, press record, and it will appear on stream. So, in terms of results, it's concerns Marika first. We didn't specifically look for metrics. It wasn't a research project. We wanted to do it first, but I'm just concerned Marika for the ones that we did get.
Yeah, so once the teaching started in Teaching Block 2 for Being Human, we looked at our stats and we found that there was a 300% increase from the previous month of the use by students. And also we measured the usage of the library resource, the library guide, over the 9 crucial weeks of the actual teaching, and that accounted for 44% of access across all the year, across all the cohorts and programs for innovation. So there is definitely a correlation there.
And again, we didn't set out to this, and I think, we were using very high level metrics like numbers on the thing, but it really, for us, is very indicative of where we might go next. So we had about an average of 112 views, and I think it has to be over a certain amount to count. 210 was our highest. Now, we had our students watch these in groups. There was about 28 of them. So again, we can't really infer too much. But what's nice is, they're looking at them. So in the assessment, when you say, what's your research methodology, and they say Google, you can genuinely say, well, that's not okay, because you did teach them. And I think it's been really useful to signposting. Supervision has been great as well. I've used it in PhD, I've used it in 2 other PGT units. So you just go, oh, you need to use website. Here you go. So just to kind of wrap up a little bit, we thought one of the most important things was kind of feedback from the students. So we ran a feedback session at the end, week 23, being human, using that thing you saw earlier. I'll give you links to all of this stuff. You can access and use it. These are really key ones for us that kind of shows, hopefully, we're doing something right. So being a database ninja, what was the question? It was, God, I've forgotten now.
What's new? What have you learned?
There you go. Sorry, thank you. I can use the library table I've before, which for me talks about confidence, and it's a real key thing in participatory design. You can't just give the skills, you have to give the confidence and opportunity to do that. Websites is amazing. I said that in the video. Watch the videos. I get really overexcited because I didn't know this stuff. I've used so many resources since Marika. Having Keir make irrelevant information in videos is useful. Now, great, it does, but also having that kind of combination of the two of us, our expertise, is just so useful for our students and me, frankly. So just to finish, we think this really shows it, right? So there was a design award, the assessment. One of our student groups just got nominated for the shortlisting. Every other person on there is a 3rd or 4th year designer, or 2 of them are outside and professional designers who are on the shortlisting. They're on the shortlist. It's management, anthropology, and computer science, these students. So just for me, I think that sets something up that says yes. And the thing they commented on was the clarity and kind of nuance of the research, which makes me really happy, because that's what we taught them, although they did it, to be fair. So finally, next year, we want to pursue some more questions. This works. This could really work across units very cheaply. This could work across disciplines and schools with a bit of facilitation. And it could go from just the videos to us working with people. So we want to see how we can support our students to reflect and transfer the digital literacy practice to core disciplines. How do they use this? How do they build a practice of library skills? It's what makes me as an innovator. How might we produce resources we can apply across units? We want to do that. So we're thinking that funding to hopefully come out. There might be others. We've got a PhD that's used doing pedagogy. We want to run another version of this next year. So that's our little pitch. Anyone who wants to kind of suggest somewhere we might get funding would be really useful. Finally, come and work with us. Now, I think Marika particularly shows that the library, the thing I feel like I found a little secret thing that no one else is quite using, because I'd work with Marika, she turns up and produces the most incredible resources you've ever seen that are relevant and useful for our students. Just get hold of your library specialists, because they're brilliant researchers in their own right, they're practitioners. And personally, I'm always happy to collaborate. I'm happy to help you produce this for your own, do whatever. I think that's the point of this. The more people we get on this, the better.